We have an OCD question. That's great because I have it. Given that a lot of OCD can be sexual in nature, do you think that OCD has ever been treated with ERP? I don't know. I don't think a lot of OCD is actually sexual in nature. There's a good portion of it for some people, but it's not like a huge majority or anything like that. The way to treat OCD is never to go along with it. That's not how you treat it. So no, it would never be treated with that. The way to treat it is to do exposure therapy in the opposite direction. Unless you mean someone's OCD is related to like having problems with that kind of stuff, then yeah, but not ERP. Well, actually, no, because there is relationship OCD, which is often, you know, like literal like romantic relationships. Relationship OCD is one of the more common subtypes. ERP might actually be part of exposure therapy for some people for that. That could be possible, yeah. But it wouldn't really be, not so much sexual in nature. That's relationship. That's new. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand OCD. Actually, vast majority of people don't understand OCD or what it's about, or that there are subtypes, what those subtypes are. The way OCD's been presented in media is so different from how it really is. Or they've taken like one type of it and represented that, and everyone thinks that that's what it is. Yeah, it's just a shame. There's also people use the term OCD, the phrase, the word to mean anything. Like so many people say, my OCD. You don't have OCD unless you were actually given a diagnosis by a medical professional for it, okay? Vast majority of people do not have it, but yet so many people will say the sentence, my OCD hates this, when they see a book that's like not even on a table. And I'm like, first of all, that's not what OCD is for most people. Second of all, you don't have it. Stop introducing it into when you talk about yourself if you don't have it, you know what I mean? People do that with autism now too. Oh yeah, they say my ADHD, whatever, when they feel restless, and I'm like, were you diagnosed? A lot of these terms get thrown around by people that don't have them, and OCD is one of the worst ones for that. But yeah, there's some types of OCD. There's some really common ones, and most of the common ones are not what people realize. A couple of the common ones are ones you might know, like counting OCD is very common. It's like in top 10 subtypes. Counting OCD is the need to count things and group them into numbers of a certain type or whatever, like how I was grouping things into fours for a long time. When I was reading especially, that was a type that I had, a subtype. Like I said, relationship OCD, a shit ton of people have that, actually. That's also, you know, one that a lot of people don't know a lot about. And a lot of people will act weird toward relationships, and they're like, I think this person has issues with commitment. You know, oh, they must have BPD because of the way they act weirdly around relationships, but it might actually be OCD related, you know? You got diagnosed with ASD, you're pro-self-diagnosis, because getting diagnosis, especially in older years, can be fucking grueling. Yeah, I feel both ways on it. I don't think they should actually self-diagnose and start telling everyone they have it, but it's good to say, I suspect I have this, and to be able to say that because, you know, you have to advocate for your health at the end of the day. So the OCD most people see is like Fisher-Price OCD. People who have it worse are in mind jail. No, what it is like the way OCD works, the actual issue with your brain that causes OCD. You got this tiny hit, so you have confirmation that this thing was done. It's that feeling of doneness, that satisfaction feeling. People with OCD will think about a thing or do a thing or whatever, and they won't get that hit. So they feel a sense of worry or doubt because something doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel settled. And because of that, they start to obsess over it. Why don't I feel right about this? Why doesn't something feel finished in a way? Or I feel like I have to keep thinking about it. So they start to obsess, and then they develop a compulsion because they start to do a thing, and that compulsion that they're doing becomes a way for them to feel like they did it, quote unquote, because they don't get the dopamine hits. They replace it with an action or a thought or something. And that kind of is a coping mechanism. It helps them get rid of that doubt in a different way. And that doesn't always work, which is why it goes out of control for some people. That is why OCD is the way it is. And then what you focus on, what you obsess over is kind of what tells you what subtypes you might have. People usually have multiple. It can be a real nightmare. It can be really bad. It can be any level of severity. Some people have very mild OCD. Some people have really severe OCD. There are levels of delusion. Some people understand that they have it, and they can have a thought and start doing a thing and go, oh, stop, pause, this is OCD. And then they try to will it away, or they try to deal with it in a healthy way. Some people are completely delusional about it. Even if you tell them that it is OCD, this thing, they're like, no, I'm gonna die if I don't turn the faucet off. My entire house is gonna flood and I'm literally gonna drown, and they'll be convinced of it, right? They'll have like a high level of delusions. There are like a lot of different factors that kind of affect people and the way it manifests in them, but the baseline is that they do not get that hit of whatever hormones, chemicals they need for their brain to be like, this thing is done. So you have very minor compulsions, like I feel my body needs tactile symmetry. If I bump my elbow, I want to press on my right elbow so they're even. Oh, yeah. And that's not even OCD related. That's just like the human brain just does that. Like in normal people, sometimes they don't always get that little dopamine hit, and that makes you like do a little thing, and sometimes it becomes habitual. It doesn't mean you have OCD. If you do have OCD, it means that like you rarely get that from certain things, or you know, it's like a severity that makes you diagnosable. Said you used to get out of bed and make sure your fridge was closed every 5 minutes whilst trying to go to bed. Found out it stemmed from my family being incapable of properly closing the fridge while I grew up. Yeah. See, a thing like that might not be OCD. It might just be like really habitual because it's ingrained. You did it, especially if you did it when you were young. younger, like growing up. OCD's been beating my ass my whole life. And the doc tells me, oh, that's what that is. I thought I was just neurotic, and I was. Yeah, it's normal human neuroses, and then it just fucking goes crazy, right? It's just that, but in overdrive and with a few weird quirky issues that you shouldn't be having. You said you were taught severity and duration were more indicative than symptoms, because those symptoms, like I said, they manifest in normal people too, people that don't have OCD. So when you get diagnosed, it depends on the state and how they like do it, but a lot of the way that they diagnose you is you have to have a minimum of like an hour of your day taken up by tunneling on these obsessions or doing these compulsions or both. That being after you try to will some stuff away. So that's the stuff that you cannot get rid of. It is ingrained in you. You have to be like doing this for like an hour a day approximately. And this depends on what subtypes you have too. Or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do, but they used to for a really long time. And then, like I said, there was also that factor with OCD of delusion. If you have any delusion around it, you're more likely to get diagnosed. Whereas if you're not delusional at all and you understand it from a very realistic perspective, that means you're really treatable, and they might be able to treat you to the point where you don't even need to be diagnosed with it. Because you can, since you're so realistic about it, you can will some of these things away, do exposure therapy, whatever, and not worry about it. But at the end of the day, if it's severe enough to get diagnosed, then you have it to a level where it's never gonna really go away. Magical thinking. Oh yeah. It's kind of like, it's almost like extreme superstition. It's normal superstition, but you actually like, like you have to do it. It's weird. It's weird. You said, not sure if it was OCD, but when I was younger, I had to have the feeling of my lungs fully filled in order to feel like I took a breath. If I wasn't lung packing, it didn't feel right. It took a long time to break out of that feeling. That's a thing that someone with OCD might do. It doesn't mean you had it, but yeah, that's kind of along those lines, yeah. Funniest thing I have is if I can't, I can't fall asleep if I feel like I can't pee. So I'll pee to make sure I know I've already done it, but then I get a tick in my brain that I have to pee. So I go to be sure. Repeat ad infinitum. I'll just pee at the bed at this point. Yeah, that's yeah, that's one of those things like you want to sleep so bad, but then you just keep getting up. You just keep getting up, keep getting up. You suspect you might have OCD because you have a lot of trouble with intrusive thoughts for weeks at a time. Paranoia despite knowing it's irrational, and if you do this action, it'll get better or you'll be safe, that kind of thought. That could be generalized anxiety, that could be OCD, right? OCD it goes along with anxiety disorders in that there are a lot of really similar symptoms at times, depending on how you've got it. So yeah, don't write it off as definitely OCD at first, but keep your mind open to the possibility. But in a lot of people, it's more likely that it's just a generalized anxiety disorder or something similar. But definitely keep it in mind, like just in case. Really track your symptoms, like write them down as they happen. That way, like little things don't go unnoticed, and that'll help you with diagnosis, yeah. You have a compulsion, type weird gay stuff into chat. Isn't that so crazy? You just spent 3 hours organizing your entire vinyl collection to alphabetical order and join a GEEGA stream, and it's about OCD. Fuck. Yeah, organization is usually not OCD. I know the stereotype. Most people with OCD don't care about that kind of stuff, actually. I think a lot of OCD is the intrusive thoughts stuff. Or having thoughts about, like, what if I did this thing and it's something terrible and it's not a thing that you actually want to do or that you think you actually would do. But your brain gets this thought of, like, what if you suddenly did, though? And then you start worrying and you're like, oh my God, I wouldn't do that. And you try to will it away. But because you don't get that dopamine hit, your brain is like, okay, what if you did though? You're thinking about it. You start to doubt yourself, right? And then you're fighting with yourself in your head about some ridiculous thought, something that you would literally never do. But your brain is still like, just ruminating over and over on like, what if you did? And a lot of people have trouble with that kind of stuff. So like a good example is some people will avoid walking near things that they could reach out and touch that could harm someone. For example, if they see scissors, they'll walk a wide circle around it because their brain sees the scissors and they're like, what if you pick them up and get someone with them? What if you did? And the person logically knows, like, I'm not gonna fucking do that. like you know that, but your brain thought of it. Your compulsion is, okay, instead of walking past it normally, because I know deep down I'm not gonna pick up the scissors and stab somebody. Like, you know that. Instead, your compulsion is, okay, I'm gonna walk far enough that I can't reach for it. Right? Because then if someone's like, why are you walking around that table so far from it? You have to turn to them and be like, because what if I pick up the scissors and stab someone, right? It's not that you actually think you can't trust yourself. You're like, the fact that the thought is in my head means that I should just make sure. And that's what starts to make it be OCDs. If you all do that all the time, and you constantly are like, ooh, let me walk away from these things, you know? It affects your life. Common types of OCD are things like that. The intrusive thoughts, you logically know you're not gonna do, but like you start to change your behaviors just to make sure, you know, or whatever. How can they drive? Some people with severe OCD that have those kinds of thoughts don't drive because they'll be driving and their brain will be like, what if I crashed? What if I did it right now? And not what if, like, on accident. What if I turn the wheel on purpose and crash right now? That kind of stuff, which is like super distressing. And that's why a lot of people that have that type of OCD are unhappy and stressed all the time, right? Because they're just thinking these terrible things that they, again, logically know they won't do. You're just exposing yourself to distressing thoughts all the time. That's the biggest difficulty for a lot of people. And everyone for the record, don't start self-diagnosing. Everyone has thoughts like that. That is a normal human thing where your brain imagines a bad scenario and thinks through what would happen, visualizes it, whatever, because that is your brain being in survival mode. It's like the same as walking into a room and looking at the emergency exits and knowing where they are. It's just, you're just making sure, just in case. But if you also have OCD, you have that thought, and instead of getting that hit of dopamine, like, okay, I've thought it through, instead of getting that hit of dopamine, you just keep thinking about it, and you're like, ah, right? Because your brain can't, like, put it to rest. And your brain's still like, but what if you did, right? And it spirals. So that's what makes it hard, man. Ooh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Anxiety, what if I did this accidentally? OCD, what if I did it on purpose? Yeah. One of the things that characterizes OCD for a lot of people is that what if I did on purpose thing? And then you go into this self-doubt pattern. Can I trust myself? Am I that kind of person that might actually do it? I don't know, right? And then like the self-doubt thing is what makes it distressing for people. So I feel like morality comes up with OCD a lot. Like I had this thought, am I an evil person who would do this? Yeah, for a lot of people, you like start to doubt your own morality. I won't get into them because it's like controversial, but there's certain types of OCD where you start to think really bad thoughts. And you, again, know that you're not going to do that thing or it has nothing to do with you or whatever, but your brain will produce really bad thoughts and then that becomes a morality thing and you're like, ugh, and that's horribly distressing. You know, logically, these people aren't going to do these things. So yeah, it's rough for people.